we're going to go over some general rules for omnidirectional movement. First, you want to move and step so that your hand and foot land simultaneously. So if I'm taking a step forward or whatever direction I'm moving, I want to try to make sure that my hand hits the target and my foot hits the ground at the same time. Now that may seem obvious, but there's a lot of people that kind of struggle with this in the beginning. So it's important to get the ability to do that as fast as you can. Once you have the ability to move and send the shot out at the same time, you're going to be able to manipulate your own timing better. Now, secondly, you want to be able to modify that as necessary. And this is where it starts to get a little bit trickier. Sometimes you're going to want to feint with your foot, especially the better you get at boxing or fighting, whatever kind of fighting you're doing. Feinting with the foot is really good when you're fighting somebody that has a lot of experience. The more experience you have, the less you look at people's body up here for tells, and the more you use your bottom line vision, kind of your bottom periphery, if there is such a thing, to identify what your opponent's feet are doing. And when you can start to see how their feet move and influence their range and angle, then you'll have a better predictive ability to know where they're going and what they're more likely to throw. And of course, that's going to get better with experience. All right, 3. It's easier to move in both directions with the lead foot. Now, what does that mean? That's when it comes to turning. It's easier for me to turn like this than it is like this, unless you have a lot of experience. Again, a lot of these things you're going to cultivate with the more experience you have. One of the ways that I like to change my turn out to the right is using the back step that you've seen a couple of my videos show. And I'll show a little inset video where you'll get to see this up close. But basically my lead foot is going to come back into the left, and then I'm going to pivot around like this. Now, I could just pivot from where I am. The problem is if my opponent is moving to my left, as in he's trying to tee off on me, in order for me to be able to get my center line lined up on him as fast as possible, I got to get this back and now turn. And as you can see, there is zero change in my lateral position relative to the new direction that I'm facing. So if I turn here, I just got closer to the camera because my lateral orientation changed based off of the lead foot position. If I put it here, now it's essentially even with the rear foot. The other option is I could just turn on the rear foot. Now, the problem is if you get hit while you're trying to pivot on the back foot, it might knock you down. If I get hit, especially forward or towards me, pivoting on the front foot, I can still use my back foot to secure myself. I know I'm kind of getting in the eaches, but these are things you need to consider when you're trying to figure out how you want to do your movement. 4, any fighter can move toward the lead side. Good fighters can move towards the rear side. And I always talk about being able to move in both directions at least. There are some boxing coaches out there that say you should only move towards your lead side. I don't agree with that. I think you're going to have a much better ability to employ your offense and to remain defensive while you do so if you can move in both directions, especially with fighters who are programmed to only deal with movement towards one side. And that is a vast amount of fighters out there. And I'm not saying that my way is the better way, it's just the way I do it. And I like to do things in the way that makes the most sense to me. So, all right, number 5. This is something you've heard me say before. Practice big amplitude and gradually make the movement smaller. If you can turn like this, you're never gonna have to do that in a fight. But if you can do that so that moving to any amplitude is a thing that comes faster, right? And then be able to fix, like right there, I threw myself off balance, right? And then I just fixed my footwork, and then I was good. You always want to remember, and this seems superfluous, but I'm going to say it anyway. A lot of the times people will be so concerned about where their feet are, if they wind up in bad position, they won't fix them. you always have to be willing, no matter where you wind up at any point, to be able to get yourself back upright. Right? It might look goofy. Who cares? At the end of the day, if it works, it works. Get yourself in position, get upright, get in your fight stance, carry on. So, anyway, work big exaggerated movements that you're never gonna need to use. Because the more precise you can get those, the easier it'll be to work on small modifications to change which direction you're facing. Lastly, practice every combination with footwork, head movement, and changing which punch you step on every single time. So if I'm throwing 1, 2, 3, I need to be able to move on the 1, the 2, the 3. I need to be able to move in opposite directions on each one. I need to be able to double up direction. I need to be able to move in one direction on all 3 punches. The better you get at doing that, the more options you have for employing every combination. Then you add on top of that, changing the rhythm and timing, changing which punch you throw the hardest, changing all these other things, and now you're just giving your opponent's nervous system a whole lot more information that it has to try to deal with, which is gonna force them to be reactive instead of proactive. So the more you can cultivate that in your opponent, the better you're going to be as a fighter, because you're gonna be dictating the terms of every engagement, and that is one of the offensive principles to which we should all be adhering. So I hope you liked the video. More importantly, I hope you like my lightning shorts and my orange sweatshirt. I'm a fashion disaster. For those of you who are more visually oriented, I wanna make sure that I'm facilitating your pedagogical needs. So I'm gonna give you a little diagram, provide you some examples that I think will be helpful. And if they're not, let me know in the comments. I'm sure you will. So, building omnidirectional movement. So what I have here is just a very simple arrangement of movements that correspond to punches. So you're gonna move to the right on a 1. And I got the S here to indicate you're gonna add a slip. So you're gonna step out to the side to the right with a slight slip. You're gonna step out to the left on the 2 with a slight slip. Now what does this do? This helps you practice moving your head offline with a punch. And again, I'm a firm proponent of only moving your head slightly. If you make your opponent miss by an inch, you make them miss by a mile, right? So you slip to the right when you throw your 1, you slip to the left when you throw your 2. Then you do it as an exercise. You just practice going back and forth. If you can make this smooth, that'll be super helpful, because ultimately what you want is your head to move not the entire duration of a slip every time you throw your 1 and 2, but pretty close, because the more automatic that becomes, the more cognizant you become of your own head movement, and then you can make it more diversified by changing your rhythm, changing your amplitude, etc. So, next step, we have 1 to the head, 1 to the body, and a 4. Now, while we're throwing that 1 to the body, and you've seen a video of this, if you watched any of the videos that I did last week with Willie, you throw the 1 to the head, you slip out to the right, and you throw that 1 to the body, and as soon as your right foot is in position, you stand up and you throw the right hand over top. Now, here's the thing. People are going to be like, oh, if I see somebody try to slip out to the outside while they throw a shot to my body, I'm just going to hit it with the right hand. Right, I'm sure you will, because you're the master of the universe. But when somebody doesn't know that this is coming, it works, especially if you have good footwork and you put yourself in position so that while they're preparing to throw that right hand, while they're being reactive, you punch the teeth out of their ugly skull with your right hand because you're being proactive, right? That's why we do these things, and we practice doing them concisely, consistently, precisely, and quickly. The more you do that, the better you get at doing all the stuff that all the internet tough guys are going to tell you they're going to do to you. And when you do it better than them, well, then you let them just live in the comments. So, you step out, throw that shot to the body, stand up, crack him in the mouth with that either overhand or you could throw across, whatever. Anyway, you're stepping to the outside line. I'll put a diagram up for you so you understand what the hell that means. Because you're coming out to the outside, you want to be able to get around your opponent's elbow. You throw the cross instead of trying to throw a straight, which is a straight punch. It comes up the middle, and you should be throwing it when your feet are relatively parallel to your opponent's. Beautiful. All right, next. 1, 2 to the body, 3. And if you notice, that 2 to the body is going to come with a slip to the left. So you're going to throw the jab. You're going to take a left step offline, pull your head offline, and you're going to squat like you normally should be doing while you're slipping, and that right hand is going to come right to the body. You can also throw an uppercut there. This too can also be a 6, and you just throw that Benny Urquidez cash register straight uppercut. You can throw it right here, you can throw it right here, right underneath the pectoral muscle. Doesn't really matter. Come offline, then you stand up, same thing as you're doing over here, right? Notice how there's a symmetry between these two activities. You're just gonna throw that 3, bang, right? Come up over the shoulder. Now, what you would do in a practical application of this, throw this once or twice with that 3, but don't actually commit to it, right? Just fake the 3, or throw it without real intention of hitting it. And then you do the same thing and you come to the body. So, and I'm gonna show you why you do that, right? So the next step here, you're gonna change up the punches. You get the opponent so that they're concentrated on this punch, right? It's the ancient art of deception. Get them to prepare for a hook. And then you actually throw the hook, but it comes after you've thrown an uppercut rather than throwing that 2. So what you're doing is making the opponent think that you're gonna change this punch when in actuality you change this punch. Now I know some of you out there are gonna be like, holy cheese and crackers, how am I gonna be able to do this on the fly? Trust me, if you just practice changing things up all the time, right? Change small things, it starts to become habit. And the more habit it becomes, then you don't have to think about it anymore. That's why I train people the way I train people. I don't just make you hit a bag for 10,000 hours thinking you're gonna get better. I give you all these little things in small increments, then you get to practice them even while you're hitting the heavy bag, you're hitting the focus mitts, you're hitting the speed bag, doesn't matter. You start practicing these things and integrating them all the time, whether it's the footwork, whether it's the touch, whether it's the feel, whether it's the cadence, whether it's the rhythm, the speed, the power, whatever, it doesn't matter. You practice each one of these elements and then you start to stack them on top of each other. That's just a sound adult learning model. And the fact that people don't know that are coaching boxing is just a condemnation of the American system of understanding how humans learn, A, but B, more specifically, our fighting sciences are not very scientific, and honestly, they're not very artful either. So I'm trying to do my little part in my tiny little corner of the internet world so I can try to fix that. So, see, look, all them PhD courses helped out. So, we change up the 6 here from 2 to 6. Now, we can throw that to, it changes the dynamic of the punch for sure. But the other thing is, you can use it omnidirectionally. So if you're real smart, you'll just take the same thing and you do it in the other direction. If you do that once or twice, your opponent's not gonna catch on until about the 3rd time, right? So we have the ability to use this same combination in 2 different circumstances. And you can practice it in both circumstances. Now you've got one combination that you can just practice ad nauseum, and it's gonna help supplement your ability to throw it moving to the right or moving to the left with a slip or even just a step, right? This is why we think about things so that they're all modular. You don't wanna learn one combination and how to throw it the same exact way a bunch of times. Now, hard stop, that's super important, and you should start with that. But if you're ever trying to get to the point where you're competing at a high level, you need to be able to get beyond that, right? Precision and concision and all of those things are great, but they're a stepping stone just like everything else. Again, I always try to harp on the fundamentals, because if you can rapidly, consistently, and precisely execute the fundamentals, you're gonna be able to do all the other stuff that you wanna do that you maybe can't do yet. You should always take a step back and ensure you're doing something that's fundamentally sound. Now, that brings us to this little chart. So, what you do with this chart is you plug in a movement here, 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 or here. And you look at how many different variations you have for this combination. So, and if you really want to do it the mathematical way, you'll break it down with a factorial, right? That means you have what is it? Well, we got 5 here, so it's 5 exclamation point for you mathematicians out there, right? It's 5 times 4 times 3 times 2, right? And then nominally times 1, right? But that is going to give you the number of different permutations you have of how many variations of this are possible. Oh, isn't that super helpful? Yeah, so when you're looking at this, you can have one movement to the right here and then don't do anything else. You can have a movement to the right here and don't do anything else. Here, 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 and so on. And then what you start doing is once you can do one, right, where you can move, let's say you can move the same direction for these 2 punches, the same direction going the opposite way for these 2, right? You start doing that and you put the different movements in different parts of the combination. Once you can do that consistently, precisely, rapidly, for any one of these different groupings here, right? You could do it here, do it here, do it here, do it here, doesn't matter. Practice each one, because at some point you're going to recognize that you can move in either direction on almost every punch. And really you can, it's just that some of them are going to make a lot more sense than others. I should do an entire video on that. You know what, that might be on the docket for this week or next week. Right? So if you need a visual example, let me give you one. You know, I would be remiss if I did not do so. So, what we're talking is, let's say, right, you're just gonna move to the right, throw the rest of the combination. Then you're gonna go left, right, right? So you throw 1, step off to the left with your 2, fire back over to the right side when you throw your 3, and then throw your 6-3. That'll work. Or you can do left, right, left. Hell, you can do. Doesn't really matter, right? At the end of the day, what you're doing is practicing a bunch of different punches and moving in different directions. And then, after you do it, like you'll just do exaggerated steps, right? Then you don't have to do it that big anymore. You do the exaggerated steps so that you can practice doing it slow at first with big amplitude, and then you make a smaller amplitude and you practice doing it faster. And then you just learn to do it consistently. As long as you have a firm foundation, there's so many different options you can make. However, you need to make sure you've got the initial necessary or requisite consistency, rapidity, and precision. I know it should all make sense, but people make things a lot more difficult or a lot dumber than they need to be, right? So we're just trying to learn things slow, cultivate a good amount of consistency, basically crawl, walk, run, from big movements to little movements, slow movements to fast movements. So I hope that adds a level of clarity to the video. If you have enjoyed this or found this informative, then please like, share, subscribe to the channel, and thank you for watching.